I saw the Flying Dutchman off the coast of the Kowie River in 1986. It was the height of summer in 1986, and the South African coastline was bathed in sunlight. The Kowie River sparkled as we launched our small 3-meter-long speedboat, its twin 120-horsepower Mercury outboard motors roaring as we cut through the water. My brother and I, both in our mid-20s, were eager for a day of seabound adventure. Bill Both, our skipper, was a gruff old man whose skin seemed as weathered as the wooden docks we'd pushed off from. He wasn't one for conversation, and every word he spoke seemed like an effort, as though silence was his natural state. He didn't seem to like us much, but he knew the waters well, and that was enough. The river opened up into the sea, the transition between the calm river and the open ocean almost seamless. The waves began to rise higher, bouncing our small boat as we sped along the coast. The hum of the motors was almost comforting, a rhythmic reminder of the power beneath us. We were far from shore now, where the water turned from a turquoise shimmer to the deep blue of the endless Atlantic. There was no particular reason for this trip, just the thrill of being out on the water, the wind in our faces, and the sun on our backs. It was an ordinary day, like so many before it. But it was also the day that would change everything for us. It started with a strange, eerie calm. The wind that had been whipping around us suddenly stilled, and the air seemed to hang heavy, almost too quiet. The horizon, which had been clear moments ago, now had a strange mist curling over it, rolling in from the east as if pulled by some invisible force. Bill grumbled something about a storm coming, but there wasn't a cloud in the sky. Then I saw it. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me, just a distant shape far off in the mist, but as we got closer, the outline became undeniable. A ship. Not just any ship, but an enormous, ancient vessel with towering masts and billowing red sails, glowing like embers in a dying fire. It was a sight that didn't belong in this world, as if it had been plucked from another time entirely. The ship's sails, those flaming red sails, seemed to glow with an eerie, otherworldly light. They were not aflame in the traditional sense, but they shimmered, flickering as though lit from within by some unnatural force. The wooden hull, dark and weathered, looked as though it had been battered by centuries of storms, yet it sailed with eerie calm, as if unburdened by the natural forces of the sea. No waves broke against its side, no wind filled its sails, yet it moved steadily toward us. "Bill," I called out, my voice trembling lightly, "do you see that?" For the first time since we'd met him, the old man's stoic face shifted into something else, something akin to fear. His weathered hands tightened around the wheel, and his knuckles turned white. "Don't look at it," he muttered under his breath, barely loud enough to be heard. But it was too late. We were already transfixed. The ship was closer now, gliding through the mist like a phantom. I could see more of it, its bow adorned with carvings, long forgotten by time, barnacles clinging to its lower decks. And then there were the crew, shadowy figures, barely visible, moving slowly across the deck. They were not like any sailors I had ever seen. Their forms were indistinct, as though they were made of mist and shadow, drifting between the ropes and sails as if they belonged to the sea itself. I could feel the air grow colder, a biting chill that crawled up my spine. My brother, sitting next to me, was as pale as I had ever seen him. We were both locked in silent awe, a mixture of fear and disbelief. Bill, on the other hand, was whispering furiously now, as though muttering a prayer or a curse. "It's the Flying Dutchman," he said finally, his voice low and thick with dread. "The ship of the damned." The Flying Dutchman, the name sent a shiver through me. I had heard the stories, of course. Every sailor along the African coast knew the legend of the ghost ship cursed to sail the seas for all eternity, never to make landfall, never to find peace. The crew, doomed to live out their endless voyage, were said to be seen only by the unfortunate souls who were destined to meet with tragedy soon after. I tried to tear my eyes away, but the ship seemed to hold us in its grip. It was closer now, almost alongside us. I could see the flames licking the edges of the sails, though they did not burn. And then, the figures aboard the ship turned, slowly, deliberately, toward us. Their eyes, if they had eyes, seemed to meet mine, though their faces were obscured by the mist. There was a silent understanding, an acknowledgement of the living and the dead. I felt like I was staring into another world, a world where time had stopped and the sea ruled everything. Without warning, Bill yanked the throttle, and our boat shot forward, the engine screaming in protest as we sped away from the ghostly vessel. My brother and I were thrown back by the force, but Bill didn't care. He drove the boat as if the very devil were chasing us. I glanced back just in time to see the Flying Dutchman fading into the mist, disappearing as suddenly as it had appeared, its flaming red sails swallowed by the sea. For a long time after, none of us spoke. The air around us returned to normal, the waves splashing against the hull, the sun once again warming our skin. But the ghostly chill lingered in my bones. Years have passed since that day, but the memory of the Flying Dutchman never left me. I can still see it in my mind, the red sails, the shadowy crew, the way it moved through the water like it was from another realm. I don't know what it meant, or why we were chosen to see it, but I do know one thing for certain, the legends are true. The Flying Dutchman is out there, sailing the seas, cursed to roam forever. And we had seen it with our own eyes. Bill never spoke of it again. He refused to even acknowledge what had happened, as if ignoring it would erase the memory. My brother and I tried to forget, too, but how do you forget something like that? Something that feels more real, more terrifying than any story you've ever heard. I don't know what became of Bill, or whether he ever had another encounter with the Dutchman. But I do know that every time I'm near the sea, I find myself looking out toward the horizon, half expecting to see those flaming red sails rising out of the mist once again. Because once you've seen the Flying Dutchman, you never truly forget. These films have been created to highlight the powerful features of Polyspeaks for You, South Africa's leading accessibility software. Learn more at www.polyspeaksforyou.co.za. We invite you to support this meaningful dyslexic initiative, crafted and developed by an individual who personally understands the challenges of dyslexia.